At what exact point do most buyers lose money when buying an apartment? Since 2023, Kenya's Directorate of Criminal Investigations report that property fraud is one of the most common economic frauds in Kenya. Under Kenyan law, buyers who skip the legal due diligence risk losing their entire investment, as courts often upholds the legally registered owner, not the one who paid first. People in Nairobi are losing millions buying property and apartments because of just one simple mistake. And today, we break this down to tell you how it happens and how to avoid it. We have Cheryl, founder of Omire Law Advocates, and today she'll take us through on how to buy property in Kenya without being scammed. This is the Full Legal Guide 2026. Tell us, who is Cheryl?
Well, thank you for having me on your platform, Liz.
You're welcome.
My name is Cheryl Omire. I am the founder and managing partner at Omire Law Advocates. Our areas of practice include commercial, conveyancing, immigration law, and last but not least, dispute resolution. For the purpose of the discussion today, I'm sure we'll be focusing on conveyancing, or what you may want to call property law.
Property law.
That is, yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. So, tell us, Cheryl, if I have money today, what is the exact step-by-step process to buy a house without being scammed?
The process of purchasing a property is a legal process. It is not an event. It is not a one-time thing. It is a continuous process that you need to follow step by step.
Yeah.
For starters, and I like that you raised it in your introduction, the question of due diligence. When you identify a property, so let's say the first step is identification of a property. Have you identified the property
What
that
you
you
need
want
to buy?
So say it's an apartment in Kilimani. Good. The next step would be conducting due diligence.
Yeah.
And due diligence is basically investigating the ownership of the property that you want to purchase.
Yeah.
And how do we do this? The first thing is, in my profession, I would advise, from where I sit, I would advise that number one, you get a lawyer to investigate who owns this property.
Yeah.
And we do this by asking the seller for a copy of the title and conducting a search.
Yeah.
Okay? In law, we say you cannot pass that which you do not own. I cannot pass to you a title or ownership of a house I do not own.
True.
Okay? So that is one of the things we must make sure we do, conducting due diligence and especially verifying who the owner of the property is. Exactly. Okay. The second thing we want is we want to know whether this developer or seller acquired the necessary approvals. Okay?
Yeah.
So you want to ask, do they have the approval from the county government? Okay? We want to ask, do they have the license from NEMA? We want to ask, do they have the approval from the National Construction Authority? Okay? These are pertinent questions that we must ask, failure to which we'll have a situation where a developer has put up a structure without approvals, and the development is put down. And you lose your money.
You've already put in your money.
Exactly. So that is step 2, due diligence. Okay? The next thing would be, of course, the seller or the vendor will present you with an offer letter. So you don't want to sign an offer letter before you conduct this due diligence and verify that this offer I am signing, okay, the person listed to me actually owns this property and has acquired all the necessary approvals. Okay?
Nice.
So then we would sign the offer letter. Now, as I'm sure you're aware and you've seen the practice around here, most vendors or sellers will ask you to sign and make a deposit before you're presented with the next documentation or steps. So we will sign the offer, okay? Return it back, make payments, the deposit in this case. Now, in practice, for off-plan purchases, the developers across the country mostly ask for 20%. That is the practice. So you will be asked to pay 20% deposit. But something else which I need to mention, the offer letter is like the basic terms of what the sale agreement will have. So reviewing this sale agreement and making sure that the terms in that sale agreement are actually in your favor is very important. Now, that part again is where people like me come in. We need to review this offer letter and make sure that you're signing up, you know, for a good deal. It is part of the process. So we need to review the terms of the offer before we sign. We need to review the terms before any deposit is made. Okay, so that will be the next step. After that, after we've made the deposit, the developer will also present you with a sales agreement. Now, the sales agreement is the mother document at this step. Okay? Because now this is the contract now. This is the sale contract that is binding the two parties before any transfer of any titles is done. Now, this is a very important document. At this point now, again, your lawyer will play a very key role in reviewing the terms. Things like, what is the price that you're paying towards this property? What is the termination process looking like? You know, what happens if the seller does not honor their obligations in the contract? How do you terminate? How do you come out? What happens if you terminate? If you change your mind along the way, how do you come out of it? Do you lose any money if the contract is terminated before completion? What is supposed to happen? So these are some of the discussions that are spelled out in the sales agreement, which we need to consider and look into before we sign anything. Now, another important thing that the sales agreement will have are additional costs that will be part of the transaction, and I'm sure that will form part of our discussion even as we go on. There are closing costs and things of that nature which you need to look at. The payment schedule, how are you required to make payments towards this property? How is it structured? Are you comfortable with the structure of the payments? You get that? So those are some of the things that we'll need to review and look into before we sign the sales agreement. At that point now, you as the purchaser will sign and your lawyer will, you know, stamp, and then the sales agreement is sent back to the seller or the vendor for them to also sign on their part, and you will be issued with a fully executed sales agreement.
So that it becomes valid.
Exactly. If neither party fails to sign, the document is a useless document. So it's important that you have a fully executed signed document by both parties. After that, you will continue to make the payments as per the schedule or as per the agreement you have made with the seller until completion. So after completion of the development or during the process towards the end, you will be issued with a transfer of lease, which again both parties will sign. Then at that point, after you make the closing costs, which I'm sure we will discuss, after you make the closing costs, then the sectional title, which the developer's lawyers would have prepared by this time, will be transferred from the developer to yourself as the purchaser.
Okay, so before you proceed, who issues this transfer? Is it the seller, or it comes from the government to the seller, then to the buyer? Who?
Well, thank you for that question. The transfer document is prepared by the seller's advocate.
Oh, the
seller's advocate will prepare all the documents in this case, actually. They will prepare The offer letter is prepared by the seller.
Yeah.
The sales agreement is prepared by the seller's advocate.
As well as
the transfer document is prepared by the seller's advocate. Our part is to review the buyer's lawyer in this case is to review all the legal documents and execute on their part, have the other side also sign on their part, and the seller's lawyer will be responsible for registering those documents.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
At that point, then now once the registration of the title is effected, then the section or title is issued to the buyer. At this point, when you have the section or title in your hand, then you can say, I have bought.
Once you have the
bought.
Title,
Yes.
Now this is mine. I can even sell it again.
Exactly.
Okay. So Cheryl, at what exact point do most buyers lose money when buying an apartment?
Well, Liz, a buyer will lose money at the point when they fail to carry out due diligence. How do they lose money? Number one, when they fail to carry out due diligence, they will not know who the property belongs to. They will not know whether this is a property that has an ongoing case. They will not know whether this this developer, has gotten the necessary approvals. Okay?
Yeah.
So if any of those are affected, then automatically you've lost money because the property will either stall due to cases in courts. It can be brought down by the government because you didn't get the necessary approvals. And number three, it would just be a fraudulent case where you paid someone who does not own the property. So you have lost because you did not carry out the most important part, due diligence.
What is the one thing any buyer must check before putting in a booking fee? Because we've seen cases where developers ask the client to just put in even 100,000 or 500,000 to book this apartment before everything is concluded.
Please be careful when you hear very good deals. I see captions of, hot deals, hot sales, and things of that nature. It doesn't matter. For as long as you have not verified ownership, you have not done your due diligence and actually ensured that the three issues that we've highlighted have been captured and you're protected to that extent, then as a buyer, you're exposed.
So on that, Cheryl, I have a question. Sometimes if it's an off-plan or maybe even a unit that it's one hot unit remaining, like facing good side, high floor, and then the client is told just do 100,000 booking fee and then sign the offer letter. On that offer letter, it's outlined, in case you change your mind or in case you don't proceed, you're going to be refunded this money. Is this wrong? Because the offer indicates that, and the client, the seller and the buyer, they are both signing that offer letter to say that in case of anything, this 100,000 booking fee will be refunded. Would you advise against this?
At least because this is captured clearly, it is documented in the offer letter that this booking fee is refundable if you wish not to proceed. And that would be, if both parties sign, then it is binding on both of you. Then you would have a claim. You'd have a claim against the seller because it's like this is a contract between the two of you saying, I'm booking this unit by making this payment, and if it doesn't mature, I have a right to receive my money back.
Okay.
So to that extent, there's really not much exposure.
Because it's an agreement between a buyer and seller. Nice. So, Cheryl, what is the most common property scam in Kenya right now?
Wow, that's an interesting one. So there's various things I've seen. There's developers who, if you look at a lot of developments around Kilimani, Westlands area, there's people who live in properties they don't have titles to. I don't know if you're aware about that, but these developers that people went through the process of purchase. You know, all these processes were done and everything, but to date, they have no sectional titles.
What is the most common property scam in Kenya right now?
Well, these are various scams I have witnessed or I have seen. So, of course, there's people selling things they don't have. So you just find people putting projects that don't exist online as off-plan, you know, projects or prospects that people can put money in. That's one. Number two, and something that which I think every person who is interested in buying property should be keen on. It is important that you do some kind of due diligence on the seller or the developer you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Recently, we have seen cases where people buy property, they're even in the property already, they've taken possession.
Living in.
You have possession of the property, but you don't have sectional titles, you don't have property. So basically, you have property, but you don't have property.
What if they have a sale agreement?
It doesn't matter. You know, a sale agreement is not proof of ownership.
Okay.
It is the sectional title that, you know, is proof that you actually own this property. So I think it is important that we look into, or you do due diligence on the developer you're dealing with. Do you know other properties they've developed? What has that process been like? Do the people who bought in their other developments have titles?
Titles, yeah.
Because there's developers who use the mother titles of these properties to secure purchase of another property. You know, so you want to protect yourself from ambitious developers who want to stretch themselves thin and be in this project and this project, you know. And so you have possession of property, but you don't have titles.
Don't have titles. Actually,
it's a big problem at the moment.
It is because developers are building. We only work with specific ones that we know have a good track record, and they deliver, and the title deeds do not take, sectional titles do not take long. Now, on that question, I want to ask, because you said if a buyer has a sales agreement, maybe they have moved in, but they don't have the title yet.
Yes.
They don't own that property legally. How long should a sectional title take? Like after the development is completed and maybe occupation has already started, how long should it take for one to get the title?
Well, the honest truth is I cannot put a time to it, because remember, this is a government process.
Government process, yeah.
You understand? It's a government process, and there are various factors that come into play. And because of the migration that has been from the old system to the new and to the others as a platform, there are a few challenges that honestly people in the legal profession are facing, and even the government on its side. Just conversion and changing to those systems has been a problem. So I cannot give you a definitive time, but it all depends on, you know, how, you know, quick your lawyer can move to fast track things. Okay. So that's the best answer I can give on that.
All right. Yes. So clients should not be worried that I'm moving in and they don't have a title. It will take some bit of time, but not just too long.
It should not be too exaggeratedly long.
Okay.
Yes.
What are the common red flags that a buyer should walk away immediately once they see?
Wow, Liz, that's a very good question. So there are various things you need to look into. Number one, when a seller insists on payment before anything, red flag, immediately walk away, do not even consider. When a seller refuses to issue you with the due diligence documents, immediately walk away. Instances where you do your due diligence and you hear, or if there's complaints about their completion, you know, periods, any delays, that's a red flag. Walk away. The other thing you can look at, if you do a search and find that, you know, the person selling to you is not the person on the title, red flag. Walk away. Yeah. The other thing is, if you investigate or do your due diligence, and see that this person does not have the approvals from county government, NEMA, NCA, all the other bodies, red flag,
Just run.
walk away. Hot deals that do not make, there's no processes, nothing wants to be followed. It's just come quickly, let's, like I said,
grab this.
property purchase is a process. It's not an event that you just, let me make this payment. No, it's a process. So if any of those requirements are not met, red flag, immediately just walk away.
Nice.
Because the cost of recovery and the process of recovery is harder than just, doing the due diligence from the onset and making sure that what you're getting involved in from the get-go, you're on the clear. So you'd rather just be clear at the front rather than recovery.
Enough of the scams. Let's now talk about costs.
Yes.
If I'm buying a property worth 8 million,
right,
how much should I pay in total?
Well, that's a good question, Liz. That's one of the most important and to me the most interesting part, the numbers, the money part. So ideally, if you're told the purchase price of a property is X, X being 8 million in this case, ideally and practically, plus, so it will be 8 million plus about 8 to 10% of whatever value you're told.
Okay.
And that will take care of what you call the closing costs.
Yeah.
The closing costs in this case would involve things like stamp duty, the legal fees, installation of things like electricity meter, water meter. Some of the other closing costs would be things like registration of the title, and things of that nature. So ideally, if the property is 8 million, you want to do a plus
8 to 10%
on average. Exactly.
Okay.
So don't think when you see 8 million, it is just going to be that 8 million. No. There are other costs that you will incur. Yeah.
And when you talk about legal fees, I've had clients who say, I'm not going to pay the developer's lawyer. Why is I'm already paying my legal? Yeah. So in this case, how do you explain to this client?
Liz, that question comes up a lot. And
a lot
of times we have to explain ourselves and again, but we don't tire.
Yeah.
I think we can understand it from this perspective. For most off-plan purchases, the vendor will have one lawyer representing them in all the sales of all the units.
Yes.
The purchase price is paid towards the development itself. So all the monies go towards the construction. That is how it works.
Yeah.
Okay. Now what you need to also take into consideration is that this is an investment for the developer, and by all means, you should know that all costs will go to the purchaser.
Yes.
Not the purchaser.
The purchaser. Oh,
will take care of all costs.
The costs, yeah.
Okay. The other thing that we need to be aware of is, the selling point of off-plan purchase is that they come into the market at relatively low price compared to what they would sell at completion.
Upon completion, yeah.
Okay. The other thing that we also need to take into consideration is for these people, this is an investment they're looking at, and they're giving you at a payment plan that is more comfortable, not as rigid as if you were being sold to a completed project. So more often than not, all the costs are passed on to the purchaser. So I know it's a discussion that happens, and most purchasers are usually like, why am I paying for the developer's lawyer? They should, but it's just the practice. Yeah.
It is just what it is. Yeah.
So you'll find that you're taking care of not just your legal costs, but also their cost, which more often than not, depending on the lawyer, is usually about 1% to 2%, depending on, the fees that one wants to charge. But that's like the standard market rate.
Okay. So what other fees other than what we have mentioned, or if it is what you've mentioned, you'll tell me what other fees catches the buyers off guard when they think, now, whoosh, I'm done, and then something else comes up that they need to pay.
Now, there's, of course, we've discussed the closing costs, which are obvious. But usually, if you look at the sales agreement, there's always mention of you're not just purchasing the unit, but you're also purchasing a share of the management company that will run the apartment.
The apartment, yeah.
Now, there's bylaws that will, regulate or control the tenants, or if the landlord is, using their own property, there's laws that will, always control that. Now, part of the costs that are hidden in this and that are not usually as obvious, there'll be mention of it, an average amount, but which most of the sales agreement will say, it will depend on what the management of the development will come up with things like service charge. So at inception, they'll just say a figure like maybe 5,000 for 6 months, but at completion and when this company begins to run, those are some of the things that may go up or down depending on what the owners will agree on. So there's that. Of course, we've discussed the issue of the legal fees and the other completion costs. But other than that, I think those are the costs that someone should take into consideration, even as they consider the purchase price in isolation.
Okay. So you mentioned stamp duty a couple of times. So what is stamp duty in plain language, just simple terms, and at what point does a buyer pay it?
So stamp duty in simple terms is tax. It is tax you pay to the government, for the transfer of that section or title to your name, for the government to register that title in your name. Remember, when they are processed in the name of the developer. So it is one of the costs that we pay at completion, the ones I called the completion costs. So you will pay stamp duty for purposes of registration of the title in your name. Now, how it works is this. In areas like Nairobi, municipalities like Nairobi, stamp duty is 4% of the value.
Purchase price.
Okay? So if the property is, say, 8 million, the property that we were discussing, so 8 million. So 4% of 8 million will be the value of stamp duty. So this is what you'll pay towards stamp duty for the registration of the title from the vendor to yourself. So that is what stamp duty is.
So stamp duty is not something we can bargain.
No.
I know that we've come across some clients, they're like, Liz, you helped us lower the price of this apartment. Please do something about this stamp duty. This is from the government. We can't bargain tax.
It is standard. You cannot bargain it. You cannot negotiate it upwards, downwards, whichever way. It is standard. For Nairobi, it is 4%. So just know in your calculation and in your preparation to purchase a property, just know stamp duty for Nairobi area, 4% on top of the purchase price. Yeah.
Okay. We've mentioned off-plan, ongoing, completed. Now, in Nairobi right now, is buying a property off-plan worth it? Is it really worth it?
I think... for starters, let me just, a disclaimer, I am not an investment expert, but I'm passionate about wealth creation and preservation. And I think the current market rates are about 7 to 9% turnover in terms of, So I think it is a good thing to consider. And also the fact that when you purchase off-plan, of course, you're getting the property at a good price as compared to if you bought the property at completion. So I think there's obviously value there. And being a fixed asset that appreciates, of course, there's absolute value in exactly.
Yeah.
But again, disclaimer, I am not an investment expert. I do not claim that title. Yeah.
Okay, so if a developer delays your apartment, like maybe you bought an off-plan and it was supposed to complete 2025 December, it's 2026 April, it's not completed, what will you as a buyer do, or what are you supposed to do as a buyer?
Liz, for starters, this is one of the reasons why you need to have a very good lawyer at the point of review of your documents, the contract, the sales agreement. Remember, there's a phrase we say that the devil is in the details.
Yeah.
Yes. So one of the things you need to look at is the completion date, what is provided there, and what are the terms around that. You want to be very clear around that. And number two, you want to be clear about termination, where the vendor does not meet their end of the bargain. Okay? What are your options? So you want to make sure that you have negotiated for yourself termination to the extent that if the vendor delays in delivering, what are your ways out? How long can you do it? You know, those are some of the things you need to look into. The time frame within which you can terminate, the period you can give them. Can you get any interest upon termination? How long should they pay you back? And if you don't, do you have recourse in terms of, can I sue them for what in law we call specific performance to make sure they complete the project, or a refund? You understand? So those could be some of the conversations that you're having, and the reason why it is so important to have someone negotiate on your behalf. Now when it comes to the contractual bits of it, so that you're very clear on that.
Oh, sawa. So on our diaspora buyers, we've seen that the Kenyans who are away, who are abroad, get more scammed as opposed to the Kenyans who are here. Why is that?
Unfortunately for Kenyans who are away, they are limited to the extent that they cannot be here to physically inspect, to physically have discussions. But thank God for the digital era. You don't need that anymore. I think the most important thing for them, people who are away, is to get the right team to work with. And when I say team in this case, I mean get the right lawyer, a qualified lawyer who can, you know, in collaboration with the agent that you'll be working with, just ensure that you're not being duped. Your eyes on the ground. They would be your eyes, your ears, on top of being the person who is looking at the documentation and reviewing everything on your behalf. So it's important that you get the right team behind you, just to make sure that you're not being duped. Because when you're away, it's difficult to assess anything on the ground. Yeah,
for sure. So they don't necessarily have to fly in before they make a deposit or before they can sign anything, as long as they have a trusted team.
Liz, you know the interesting thing about today's world? I personally have people I have facilitated their investments here who have never set foot in this country.
Kenya,
They have never seen, they have never been, but they have worked with the right team and trusted the process. And, you know, their investments are here, and their houses and their units, you know, they're renting them out. So it's just a matter of getting the right team to work with, a trustworthy team, then you should be fine. You don't have to be here to sign anything. That is why we are here, to guide you through the process of how that can be done while you're away. So that should not be an issue for anyone thinking of investing in this country.
So when we talk of investments, do you think, as a legal partner, do you think apartments are a good investment now in Nairobi?
Again, disclaimer, I am not
A property advisor,
exactly. I'm not an investment expert. But just seeing what's happening in the market right now, there's a lot of foreign investment in the country. There's a lot of people buying developments. There's different structures coming up. If you look at Kilimani, it's a whole construction site. If you look at Westlands, if you look at Kileleshwa, Lavington area, it's a whole, in fact, there's people who make jokes and say Nairobi is a construction room. So all this would not be going on if there's no value to it.
Yes,
but again, we leave that to the expert. But from my experience and what I see, there's value in wealth creation through purchase of property as one of the asset classes. And it's something that, of course, people who are keen on investment should consider.
So as we close on this, what is one mistake that can cost 1 million when buying property in Kenya?
The cornerstone of this entire discussion, the due diligence. It is the one thing that if you skip, you will not know who the owner of this property is. You will not know if there are cases against the developer. You will not know if there are any approvals on this property that have been done. You will just miss out on the most important step, and it will cost you. So over and above everything, have someone to represent you and just make sure that the due diligence on whatever property you're purchasing has been done, and whoever is selling to you owns. Whoever is giving you a sales agreement has their name on that title, has their name on the offer, has their name on the sales agreement. That is the only way that you can say you and this seller are bound by a document, a legal document. The process, you have gone through the legal process of purchasing a property. Otherwise, if you go through that process, you'll be safe and you will have your property. And even if you don't, then you are not as exposed, because these legal documents will then protect you. You have a claim against this person in the event
Cheryl,
that the deal
thank you
goes
so
sour,
much for answering our questions.
These documents.
But I have 2 quick fire questions. Is it true that a verbal agreement is a legal agreement?
In the strict sense, it is. A verbal agreement is an agreement, but not when it comes to property. For property, any such agreements must be in writing, must be executed, must be witnessed. So for property, that does not apply. But for any other arrangements, that would apply. Except when it comes to matters property, it must be in writing, must be signed, must be witnessed.
My last quick fire question. Can somebody buy a property without a lawyer?
You can, but the exposure, there's exposure to the extent that these things I will know as a lawyer to protect your interest, to review your contracts and just the due diligence part of it, the things I need to look out for, which as a layman you might not be privy to. So I would advise that at all times, anything to do with property, always get a lawyer.
So guys, you heard her. We have officially partnered with Cheryl. Her numbers are on the screen.
Well, we want to thank you for listening to our conversation around property. We are passionate about conversations around wealth creation and preservation, and we are happy to be part of that journey. We are excited about the partnership with Vivara Realty, and we look forward to answering all and any questions around property. Thank you.